Okay, welcome, math leaders. I hope everyone's having a great day. We invited a lot of math leaders across the state, but I know how busy things are in districts, and unfortunately, um, maybe not everybody is able to come today, but this is being recorded if you'd like to share it with any of your math leaders in your district. So if you haven't already, put your name in the chat with your district if you're so inclined. If you want to stay anonymous, that's okay too. Um, and we'll have time for questions. And since it isn't, I don't think, a large group, if you do have a comment or a question and you want to raise your hand, um, our director here in the Office of K-3 Education, Dottie Specht, is going to help me by unmuting you and allowing you to speak and share any thoughts that you have or questions. Also, throw things in the chat. She's going to monitor that for me as well. So, without further ado, I'm going to begin. Today, we are talking about flexible small group instruction in early learning mathematics. A really important topic, in my opinion. And though I think everyone's doing it to some extent, as I visit districts, I'm seeing that it's not as widespread as I thought it would be. And I think districts still need support in this area, so I definitely wanted to give some supports, and we'll offer more after this training is over. So I shared with everyone this article called Math in the Early Years. It is a little older, it's from 2013, but it's probably one of my most favorite articles for early learning. And it's not about small group instruction necessarily, but it does give you a lot of surprising findings about early math instruction. Surprise one is that there's predictive power in early mathematics. Children's early knowledge of math strongly predicts their later success in math. But even more surprising is that preschool math knowledge predicts achievement even into high school. And the most surprising thing is that it predicts later reading achievement as well, even better than early reading skills. So math is a huge indicator and predictor in the early years for later school success. Surprise two is that given opportunities to learn, young children possess an informal knowledge of mathematics that is amazingly broad, complex, and sophisticated. Preschoolers through third graders are like little sponges. They can learn to invent solutions to solve simple arithmetic problems, and almost all of them engage in substantial amounts of pre-math activity in their free play. Sometimes we think they come to school without any knowledge of math, but they've really already been exposed to so much through their own interactions with friends, with nature, with environment. Surprise three is that teachers underestimate what their children know and can learn. One study showed that groups of teachers and teacher trainers and counselors who worked with young children underestimated the math competencies of these very same students when they entered kindergarten, from preschool to kindergarten. If teachers and those who work with teachers underestimate what students already know and can learn, they're not going to present those challenging math activities to children. So we do have to change that mindset. Um, Almost all children need a math intervention from one um, domain or another. Stephen Barnett and other researchers have shown that it's not just the most economically disadvantaged or poorest or children with learning disabilities who need intervention. It's everyone, especially at their early years. And surprise five is that we do know a lot. There is a lot of research out there, and a lot of people aren't really paying attention to the research, and we need to get them to. So that article I think is really important to share with your early learning teachers if you could, because it's a quick read and it does have a lot of heavy, good research in it. All right, so why are we here today? What's our purpose? And why should teachers incorporate small group math into their instruction? So I'll just let you read that quote to yourself. The small guided groups give teachers the ability to reach all of our students in the class, not just that 1/3. They get to meet children right where they are in their zone of proximal development, and it allows teachers to teach that individualized content specifically and allows them to focus on the standards for mathematical practices, not just content. In small groups, children have opportunities to engage in the mathematical thinking, and they can communicate their thinking more freely, more so than in the large group. They have opportunities to reason, clarify, justify. It's important to give them this little safe place in this small group setting so that they're confident when the larger community of learners comes together and has that whole group discussion. Because I've been in classrooms and you've been in classrooms where there's just children who aren't sharing and they probably don't have the confidence that they should in math. But in that small group, they gain that confidence. Also, they should all be getting access to grade level standards in that small group setting at their level. Tomlinson, who's one of the differentiation gurus, said that differentiating advocates attending to students as individuals. It doesn't assume a separate assignment for each learner. So it should be student-centered and teaching is adjusted to meet the needs of the students. It's really ordered flexibility. There's lots of balls in the air, but they're not out of control. Differentiation has to be rooted in assessment, but must still be dynamic. So think about how you, if you're in the classroom as an interventionist or a teacher, or your teachers that you're working with, how do they currently differentiate in the K-3 math classrooms? So if you want to just think on that, you can throw something in the chat. If you want to raise your hand and share, you can at this time.
I see Melanie, Erin Embun
Okay.
would like to, and I'm trying to unmute her.
So I think you give her the ability to unmute and then she has to unmute herself.
Oh, okay. You should be able to unmute.
Okay. Hi, how are you?
Hi.
I just, could you clarify? I wholeheartedly agree with you. I believe that, small group intervention during a classroom lesson is probably one of the most important things that happen. It sounds as if you're talking about differentiating content, like prior to the mini lesson. Is that what you're advocating at this point?
No.
Okay.
You mean like a whole group mini lesson?
So, yeah. So, I mean, I'm firmly believing that all students have, the right to the mini lesson first. And then if they don't understand, they need more clarification, then obviously we would do some small group intervention for kids who needed a little bit more.
That's
But,
right.
I'm very hesitant. I'd just like you to clarify that you're not advocating for differentiating prior to any type of assessment so that they don't get the opportunity for the grade level assessment, the grade level work.
So what you said first, right before what you just said, was absolutely correct. Everyone gets grade level content in a whole group mini lesson. We'll go through the framework. Oh, sure. But that's the whole point. No. That's the whole point. It's not about just in case learning. Hey, this is my low group. We don't ever want to talk about children as my low group and they always get an intervention. We want to talk about children as everyone gets grade level content. Everyone can do the math. And then we're going to differentiate based on their needs and where they are in their zone of proximal development. So you're absolutely right. Everyone gets the grade level content, but we do have to differentiate it to meet the needs of all of our learners after the fact. So what you said is spot on. So thank you. Is there anyone else who wanted to share before we move on?
Melanie, did you want me to read any of the?
Sure.
Okay. You have from Tara, mini lesson, break into small groups or center rotations, targeting instruction with teacher in a small group. Okay.
Great.
We have student choice was another. I'll just read two of them. How they are assessed, product, process, or process.
Excellent. Okay, thank you. Thanks for sharing. All right, so why those flexible small groups? So we all know students are definitely at different developmental levels. Small guided math groups provide a powerful opportunity for all students to learn math. In those small groups, we can meet them where they are and take them where they need to go. We get everybody talking within and among themselves. We start coaching the learning, we facilitate thinking, orchestrate masterful conversations, and everyone's invited to engage as thinking mathematicians, no matter what level they're at. We get to hear how others are doing it and also hear ourselves making sense of the math. So we're sharing with our peers. We also get that immediate feedback as students and we can stay on track. It allows everyone to reach their next level of learning and become proficient in grade level standards. So our agenda today for this hour is really we want to just talk about some of the beliefs about teaching math. I kind of want to get us all on the same page, have those common definitions. How you can get started in your classrooms with small group instruction if you're not there yet. And if you are there, just to help you enhance and plan teaching and instruction. And then any questions you're sharing. So I know most of you are math leaders and you're going to be supporting teachers in this. So I think that I'm hoping that you'll find something new here. If you don't, and this is something that you're already doing, I hope that you share out at the end and give us some successes that you're having as well. So let's just talk about our common definition. What do we all believe about the teaching and learning of math? Beliefs about students learning math. I always, not always, but I used to start off a lot of my trainings with telling teachers, I'm not a reader. I don't read. I actually don't read well at all. I don't like it. I don't read well. I've been told I'm not a reader. I don't even write. And they would look at me like, there's something wrong with me, of course. But I would laugh and say it's interesting how it's hard to come to a meeting and tell teachers I don't read or write, but to come to a meeting and say I'm not a math person, I don't love math, I don't do math, I'm not a math person, is okay. It's totally acceptable. And I think as youngsters, we were taught that, hey, there's math people and there's not math people, and you might not be a math person, and that's okay. But it's not okay. We're all math people. All students can learn math. We just learn at different paces. Maybe we learn in different ways. All children should be given the opportunity to learn grade level content and be expected to learn it. Beliefs about teachers and teaching math, that teachers really need to have solid content knowledge and strong knowledge of student development and learning trajectories. And this is something, unfortunately, our early learning teachers just don't get. In pre-service learning in college, how many courses were you given as a teaching early learners math? Probably not many. If one, I'd be surprised. So unfortunately, it's our job then as administrators or support to give them the professional learning in pedagogical content knowledge, as well as student development and learning trajectories in math. And that's a tall order for sure, but we got to take it on because it's important. And beliefs about developing math proficiency, that math really does need to be taught at the concrete, pictorial, and abstract levels. Not every child learns the same way. And really, children should be taught in small, flexible learning groups to give them intentional math instruction and build their personalized foundational understanding of math. I had a teacher who told me that when she was younger, and she's older, she's around my age, and she said she was pulled out for math back in the 80s, and she was told she just wasn't a strong math student. And she was probably one of my best math teachers. And the thing that she loved about it is that she could teach children the way that they learn instead of how the process works. So here's the process for addition or subtraction, and that's how you have to do it. No, she showed them concretely. She used representations through drawings and pictures. She acted it out. And she said, I finally understand that everyone can learn math. It's just we learn it differently. So hopefully we can all have those common definitions about teaching and learning math. So defining flexible small group instruction. We call it flexible because not every child is going to be in the same group all the time. I'm not always going to be an expert. I'm not always going to be a novice learner. Depending on the domain, I might be at different places. So we really do need to give children the benefit of showing what they know before we group them. I've been talking to teachers about the language of low and saying, oh, this is my low group. And just to be so careful with that, because we don't talk about that when we talk about adults. Oh, this is my low friend. She's not a great driver, or she doesn't cook well, or we don't say that about people. But yeah, we find it no problem to talk about children in that capacity. So we really want teachers to get away from that language of low and start to think about them as maybe novice learners or expert learners in a certain domain. So I'm just going to show you a quick video just describing what a small guided group looks like. In guided math groups, students engage in standards-based, rigorous learning opportunities where the teacher focuses on a particular concept, strategy, or skill. Teachers facilitate this learning through hands-on, scaffolded conversations and intensive questioning.
What does it mean if something is equivalent? Think. You already know. Yeah? What do you think?
If one thing makes something, you can do it a different way, but still with the same exact things.
Okay. Who else can add to that?
Guided math provides a structure for teachers to differentiate instruction so they can reach and teach every student. Guided math groups are small, intentional lessons with students around a particular topic, presented in their zone of proximal development.
The format of the small guided math group is to introduce the learning target, make sure that the students understand what they're learning and what they're going to be doing is very critical, so that's no wasted time or energy. Here's our learning target here. We are learning to count up and back on the number line, to add and subtract. And we're going to figure out what is the more efficient strategy to get to an answer.
Teachers meet with every child in their class multiple times a week in small math guided groups. These small groups allow students the opportunity to talk with each other and do the math. That's truly the essence of guided math, students talking and working. Students get to use various materials to explore concepts in their guided math groups. They may be acting things out, using objects, using drawings, or using diagrams. They're always engaged in hands-on, minds-on activities. The teacher then models or demonstrates the math concept, strategy, or skill. Children have opportunities to discuss and practice the math in a group, with a partner, or alone.
What you're going to do today, we're going to do a little activity today where we're going to use our number grid to help us. We're going to use the place value comparison mat to help us. We also have our base 10 blocks. We have our longs, right? And we have our cubes.
When I'm assessing students, I'm definitely looking at how they are collaborating, how they're working together with their partnerships, seeing if they understand the purpose of why they are there. If they don't understand, then it allows me to prompt them with questions that will guide them in a system to help them improve their math. 2, count 1, 6, and see where you land. Guided math is a place where every student gets individualized attention that they can't get in a whole group setting. Guided math is a proven instructional strategy that every teacher needs in their toolkit. Okay. All right, so that was just an introduction as to what it is. If you are sharing this with teachers, to have a video like that, just introduce it is always helpful, but it does kind of just bring it all together. I'm just going to move on to, as we get started in our classrooms, making sure that we have purposeful small group instruction. We also have a mathematically rich classroom. You really should have lots of tools in the math classroom. You should always start by using tools from the year before, and you should add to it based on what you're studying. Students are going to constantly being asked to prove it or show me what you know, clarify, share.
the culture of the classroom needs to support this, but the physical environment needs to support it as well. So that mathematically rich environment is going to support students thinking in a variety of ways with concrete manipulatives, counters, drawings, graphic organizers, and even those perseverance posters. So in our younger classrooms, maybe anchor charts might be visuals, there might be a lot of pictures. Maybe in our older classrooms, they might have QR codes to organize them. Should always have vocabulary and word walls with lots of pictures and realia. Landmark clocks to count by fives and understand how it, I'm sorry, how a real world tool can be used. You should have schedules up with times. There should be lots of number grids, walk-on number lines, things like that that kids can physically use their body with in the early grades. Everyone should have math libraries. Toolkits, like I said, use things from the year before, but continue to add to it as the year goes on. And I advocate individualized toolkits. Everyone should kind of have their own, but sometimes districts just don't have that, and that's okay. But you should always have some tools on hand. And then teachers really should have a nice workstation storage area where they can keep all of their materials. So I'm not going to go through this whole entire video because it's kind of long. I'm just going to show you a bit of it, but you can use it at a later date when working with teachers to show them what a good small group looks like. But we're really going to start to look at the constructivist approach and the concrete, pictorial, and abstract method of learning in this small group setting. So in the constructivist approach, students construct their learning through interactions with the materials and their peers and their teacher. And the learning spirals and they build on prior knowledge. And the scaffolding should lead to grade level mastery. But it's important to guide students through a cycle of engagement that includes exploring ideas at the concrete, pictorial, and abstract levels. It's important to consider ways to introduce ideas at the concrete level and then move them into the pictorial level. Keep in mind that there's a lot of levels in there too. So in the concrete level of understanding, for example, you might have tens and ones that are created using beans and sticks before you move on to commercial-based 10 blocks. So students are actually constructing their own idea of what a 10 is before they're just using that base 10 block. So while watching this video, just consider how the teacher's using that concrete, pictorial, and abstract model to make grade level content accessible to all learners. I'm just going to, again, I'm not going to show you a lot, but if you want to put anything in the chat that you're noticing, and Dottie will help us share it out, that would be great too.
All right, so boys and girls, today you know that we are learning to compare two-digit numbers using relation symbols, greater than, less than, and equal to, right? Okay, so what you're going to do today, we're going to do a little activity today where we're going to use our number grid to help us. We're going to use the place value comparison mat to help us. We also have our base 10 blocks. We have our longs, right? And we have our cubes. Okay, so here's what's going to happen. Ms. Cornegay is going to give you your first two-digit number. Anyone tell me what this two-digit number is?
13.
13, right? And what is the next two-digit number you see here? 12, okay? So you're going to get your first two numbers, okay? And they both have two digits in them, right? And we learned that two-digit numbers also have a tens place and a ones place. So let's take a look at the number 13. I'm going to write that here. Can anyone tell me how many tens and how many ones 13 has? 1 10 and 3 ones. So guess what we're going to do? We're going to use our base 10 blocks to help us build the number 13, okay? Emilio said 13 has 1 10, right? And 13 has 3 ones. So I'm going to use my cubes to represent that, right? Now, we have to think about how we're going to use our relation symbol to compare these two numbers. What are you thinking here? Can you take your counters and can you put your first counter on the number 13? on your number grid, please. Good. Can you take your second counter and put it on the number 12 for me? All right, so when looking at the number grid and you're comparing these two numbers, what do you think about the relation symbol? What do you think?
I'm going to stop it there and just fast forward it to the building.
So you're starting to build using your log. How many tens are you showing me for 58? 5 tens. Good.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. If anybody wants to raise their hand and Dottie can unmute you, we could, if you want to share anything about what you're noticing about the concrete pictorial or abstract in that video. The teacher used a lot. Well, she was definitely making the content accessible to all learners. So there was definitely some students probably at the abstract level of learning, but she was really building their understanding from the concrete up. Did anybody want to share anything? I don't want to move on if anyone wants to share.
There was one comment from Beth. She says, I noticed direct access to manipulatives, building, composing numbers in order to compare them. And then Tara said, used math vocabulary and math talk. And Kristen said, precise language. Dr. Elizabeth said teachers used base 10 blocks to ground understanding.
Love it. Yeah, you guys hit on things I didn't even think about, but those, the math talk and the very specific language was, I think, really important too. She brought in a lot of different tools there. So thank you for sharing. All right, so just getting started, what a sample math block would look like. I am not here to tell you at the state that we are saying this is what your math block has to look like. I'm not saying you have to have an hour or 75 minutes or 80 minutes of math. I need you to, at the local level, make those decisions. I personally believe we should have 75 minutes of math for all students in the early years. This is not my call to make. This is your call to make. But I do find when I visit districts that that is the norm. So that is a really great thing. And when you do break down your math block, this is just a sample of what it could look like. So really 60% of your time as a teacher should be spent in small group instruction and centers. And that teacher that we watch, she's a first grade teacher. She does not have an instructional assistant. She does that all on her own. She make sure that she spends the first 20 days of school setting up those expectations for center work and setting up the expectations for small group work. So students know what they're doing in those centers, and she's not disturbed while teaching her small groups. It's not an easy task, but it is something that can be done, and it's meaningful work at the beginning of the school year. So really what your block should start with is some routines every day, some number talk, maybe just an energizer to get ready to do math that day, some mental math activities, whatever you think. Maybe sometimes in your core materials, there's a mental math activity that you can use. It's not calendar. It's not today is Monday, tomorrow will be Tuesday. I mean, that's not really math work. So we really want to get kids energized and excited about math. The next 10% should always be spent on problem solving. Every day you should be doing some type of problem solving activity, whether it's a 4-day cycle or a 5-day cycle where students read a problem, understand it, and the next day they start to plan, and then the third day they start to solve, and the last day they share out their answers and solutions and how they solved. or maybe you are doing just one quick problem that day between partnerships. It just depends on how you plan your problem solving period. You might use tools like Splat or 3-act tasks, things like that. It's up to you, but you definitely should have children engaging in some type of problem solving every day. And then you'd start with that whole group mini lesson. Everyone gets the grade level content. So whatever the unit of study is, you're attacking that through a whole group mini lesson, maybe modeling an activity. And then you're moving right into your small group instruction and centers. Then at the end of the period, you're debriefing. And that can mean many different things. Some people use journals to kind of just reflect on an essential question that they wanted to ask. Some people have a mathematician's chair and the children come up and just talk about what they did in small group or what they did in centers that day and just share out. Just never skimp on the intro and debrief. I think it's really important to get kids excited about math and then to really wrap up math with an important debrief. We're really reflecting on what we learned because it's important. And then I'm going to share a small group framework with you. Just for your small group, it shouldn't be haphazard. Teachers really do need a bit of a framework. So to give them a framework where they know when to present the mini lesson and the focus for the day and model, discuss and do the math and carry out the activity, and constantly focusing on discussion is important. So this is just an example of a small group framework that you could use. Again, it's really just like a 15-minute period. Teachers present the mini lesson, what we're learning that day. Today we will, or you are learning how to. And then they model that math, demonstrate the math concept, strategy, or skill, and then children really discuss and do the math. Children get those opportunities to discuss and practice the math with their group, with a partner, or sometimes even on their own. And then the teacher gets to monitor the work. She gets to formatively assess. She gets to ask them questions, guide their conversations. Also, kind of check in and guide those misconceptions too, because sometimes students are making those mistakes, and you can quickly, change that for them. And then at the end, just like in a whole group lesson, you really do have a debrief. What did we learn today? Summarize those major takeaways. Maybe it's a specific, homework assignment that they're going to be getting. And then they move to their next center. So the goal of small group instruction is really for students to start to become more confident in their math learning and become like mathematicians. But you have to really plan this section. Teachers shouldn't be sometimes teachers will say, oh, I just immediately pulled this group over because in whole group they were really struggling. And that's okay. Sometimes that's going to happen. But for the most part, you're really planning these activities. And they're really based on some type of assessment that you've done, whether it's a summative assessment, the end of unit assessment, students still need work in this area, or maybe it is based on your unit of study and you're formatively assessing as you go, but it really should be more planned, very specific, targeted, and flexible. I just have to say something about using your core resource. Just always be careful. You can choose whatever core resources or supplemental resources you want as a district. And there's a lot of great ones out there, but don't work for the program. Let the program work for you. Teachers really don't have to follow a program just the way it's written. They can go off a little bit to meet the needs of their learners. Because if we're in kindergarten and we're learning how to count to 100, not every child is going to be at the same place in December. Some kids are going to be way past 100. Some kids are going to be not even close to 50, maybe not even in their tricky teens yet. So we really do need to have the program and the resources work for us. And the other thing is, I never tell a teacher how to organize their centers and their small groups. I really feel like they do need to come up with a system of organization that works for them, and find good models out there, good teachers that really did find a good organizational technique, and share it. But really, I don't want any teacher I don't ever tell a teacher this is how it has to look. It really does have to work for them.
Melanie, you have a question from
Sure, go ahead.
Erin. And Erin, I think you can unmute yourself.
Hi again.
Hi.
Melanie, I think it's important to talk about the program and the knowledge base of the teachers. We have a lot of new teachers. We have a lot of leave replacements. We have many teachers who did not go into elementary education because they love math. And I think, the program needs to be an important tool for those teachers who need more support. A lot of these teachers are teaching 3 and 4 subjects at a minimum a day. They're trying to keep
Sure.
up with all of the, science of reading, all of the changes there. The things that we expect our teachers to do in 3rd grade is what we expected in 6th grade 10 years ago. We have a lot, we're putting a lot on our teachers. So although I agree we don't want to take away their autonomy, I think it's important to let our teachers know that it's okay to use the resources and they don't have to reinvent the wheel for every lesson to be considered a good teacher.
Right. Yeah, of course. So and that's what when I said that, I'll go back. The core resource shouldn't provide the plan for instruction. So what I'm saying by that is that it's a tool. It has to be a resource and a tool. They do need resources and tools. I oftentimes find that there's so many great centers and small group activities within your resource, your core resource, that teachers don't even get to use. Sometimes they give them so much, it's hard to pick and choose. So yes, you really want to use your resources as tools, and they should be research based. They should be standards aligned. So of course that tool is going to help them. I just feel like it's not always so purposeful to give teachers a pacing guide and say, okay, on day 1, everyone's doing lesson 1. And on day 2, everyone's doing lesson 2. Because we do start to see children falling through the cracks. And I visit classrooms where it is all whole group instruction and it is one goal for the day, and there is no differentiation on that goal, and they're expecting all children to be on the same path, and there are different paths. So when I say be careful of just following a resource blindly, of course you want to use your resource and you want to use your tool, but it works for you, and pull out things because it does give them such great differentiation ideas. I've seen all of them in action, and I got to tell you, there's a lot of good resources within each lesson. But there's other resources, and that's what I was just going to share. Um, and Erin's right. I mean, teachers aren't taught how to teach early learning math. It really is it's a tall order for them. So relying on their tools is important. There's other resources that are developmentally appropriate for children in the K to 3 space. We do know that children follow a natural developmental progression in learning. There's curriculum research out there that's revealed sequences of activities that are effective in guiding children through these levels of thinking. These developmental paths are the basis for the learning trajectories. So I'm going to show you what the learning trajectories are and how they could be used. It's just another resource. It doesn't have to be used, but it's a free educational resource. They have 3 parts. There's a goal, the developmental path, um, and those activities that can help them to meet that goal. So I'm just going to share that with you. Hopefully I can get to it quickly. Okay, so this is a free resource. It's called the Learning Trajectories. And like I said, these are the goals. So if we're working on counting in kindergarten, this would be the goal. This is the developmental progression. So some kids are simply reciting numbers 1 through 10, just like they recite letters, LMNO, and things like that. Some kids are actually counters to 10, and they're starting to understand that there's a one-to-one correspondence, and they understand the cardinal principle. So as you start to see where your kids are in the counting sequence, then you can start to find different activities to help you in your small groups. So if I know that most of my kids are counting to 100, but I still have this small group that are counting to 10, here's some activities that I can do in my small group. Um, Another thing I like about this site is it shows the teachers what does it look like when my kid is a counter to 10, as opposed to a chanter or a reciter, or a producer of a set. So this is just another resource that teachers can use to help them determine some activities that they could use in small group, especially when kids are above or below on the trajectory. Because oftentimes when you're using your core resource, sometimes it doesn't really allow for that differentiation or offer enough suggestions. So this is just another suggestion. Again, it's a free tool if you want to share it with your teachers.
Melanie, someone has a question. Should
Sure.
small groups be a part of every day, or can it be executed 1 to 2 times per week?
Again, we're coming from the state level telling you that this is a great practice. I can't tell you what to do. What I will tell you is that it is suggested that you should be doing small groups every day. As often as possible, children should be in a small group learning environment. When I worked with my teachers, I used to have them kind of take days off here and there so they can monitor the centers and formatively assess there as well. So it's okay to take days off from small group instruction to monitor what's going on in those centers as well. There's no hard and fast rule, but my suggestion is, based on the research, that intentional small group instruction is more powerful than whole group instruction. So the Consortium for Policy Research and Education does recommend that math educators recognize that there is research on these trajectories in math, and they really should focus on these developmental progressions and understand that they're there. Unfortunately, again, teachers aren't taught that so well and do need supports through professional learning. All right, I'm going to show you a small group in kindergarten. You can just just things to think about while watching the video. What's important about the size of this group? What's the teacher doing during the group? What are students doing during the group? So I will start that.
So the first thing I want to show you is a number story like this, okay? We're going to be adding and looking for the solution. So boys and girls, since we're going to be adding today, what type of words do you think we're going to be using when we're talking? When we add, what types of words do we use?
Plus and minus.
We use plus. Plus is an addition word. Minus is a subtraction word. What other words do we use, Kaylee? Think about it. What other words do we use when we're doing an addition number story?
Add and subtract.
We say add. We do use a number line, right?
We use our numbers.
We do. We're going to use the word jumps too when we talk about our number line. But when we're adding, we're going to use words like plus and put together, because when we add, we're bringing things together to make a bigger number. We're also going to use this word at the end of our number story.
Minus.
Not minus.
Equal.
Equals. So we're going to be using those words, plus and put together and equals. So first I want to take a look at this number story. And I'm going to give you guys number lines to work with. So
I'm going to go through it a little quicker because it is a longer video. But you see how he introduced the topic. Now children are given tools.
What is 7 plus 2 equal? All right. So thumbs up if you found your answer. Let me see a thumbs up right here if you found it. Eswin and Messiah, what is 7 plus 2 equal? 9. I see my friends here made their hops too. Now let's try a different number story. This is what we're going to be working on today. A number story that's a little bit different. This time, we know how many we started with in our story, and we know how many we had at the end of our story. But this time we're missing what's in the middle. Can you say add-end? An add-end is something we add together to make our answer, and one of our add-ends is missing. We started with 4 birthday presents at the beginning of my party, and then something happened. And at the end of the party, I had 10 presents. hands. So we knew how many I had at the beginning. Kaylee, out at the beginning of the party, how many presents did I have? 4. And how many did I have at the end of the party? 10. So we don't know how many hops. So Messiah, we need to plot out the numbers we know. So what numbers do we know in our number story?
4 and 10.
Why don't you plot those on your number lines now?
Okay, I'm just going to move forward a bit.
Started with 3, and you can tell the story. You had 3 cookies at the beginning of the story. How many did you have at the end? 5. So our missing number is going to tell us how many jumps we have to take. So what is our missing added? Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. He continues to work with the children, and I'm going to share his assessment debrief at the end too. But if anybody wants to share out, if they want to unmute, anything that you noticed about the size, about what the teacher's doing, about what the students are doing.
You do have a comment, Melanie?
Sure.
How would this small group activity be differentiated?
So this is definitely his expert group. They're in kindergarten and they're doing missing add-ins, which is really a higher level skill at this point in the year. The rest of the kids aren't quite there yet, but it is definitely a higher level skill using tools, not so much concrete materials. So he's definitely working with his expert group to kind of bring them to the next level. So that's where we are along the progression, I would say. In kindergarten, we're finding there are children who are struggling with counting, to 5 and identifying numbers compared to children who are counting past 100 and adding with missing add-ins and things like that, or solving problems. So I think that's the hardest part for a teacher, is to identify where the child is and then meet them where they are in that small group. It really does take a lot of planning.
And Beth McCarthy has her hand up for a question.
Sure.
Beth, you should be able to unmute.
Hi, I was just going to answer the question regarding the size of the group. I noticed there was 4 students there, and because of that size, the teacher was able to interact with each of them consistently throughout the time that they were together, so that checking in when he was asking a question, being able to respond to all their responses. So initially when some said subtraction and some said addition, he heard all the response and was able to kind of provide individual feedback and then kind of keep the group going. So I think that smaller size of about 4 students was really important to the effectiveness of the small group.
Thanks, Beth.
And one last comment, Colleen said he modeled nicely the use of vocabulary, math vocabulary.
Yeah, and in kindergarten, it's so important. I've seen teachers who don't use words like angles or, different words for addition and subtraction that they should use, or different words in geometry that they should use. I do feel like we don't introduce children to vocabulary that they can easily grasp. So I think you're right about that. Thank you for bringing that up. Okay, so during assessment in small group, it really is important to listen to the students' conversations and guide their instruction in the moment, like Beth said. And he really did do a great job with that. He does need to take anecdotal notes. I have to tell you, being in the classroom for many years, I think I'm a pretty intelligent person. I have to tell you, by the end of the day, I was like, who couldn't do that? Who did this? Who did? You just forget. You remember the activity, you remember what happened, but then all of a sudden you're like, which student couldn't do this, or what student did do this? If I didn't write it down, that was that. I really needed to take some anecdotal notes to really guide my future instruction, and then even change up my groups a little bit. So these small guided groups give teachers that opportunity to have those multiple close encounters with their students multiple times a week. So they really do know where they are and where they're headed. And they can observe them closely, listen closely to what they're saying, probe deeper through questioning, and understand where they are on that developmental progression and truly personalize future instruction. So I'm going to show you a quick video of him assessing, and then we'll move on.
So we have a number. 10 plus 0 jumps equals. So what's our missing addend? 0. Very nice. If there's no jumps, then we use the number 0. All right. Erase it and show me another one, Messiah.
Because it's like
Haley, help. I want you to work on this number sentence and let Sophia work on hers too. How did you find the number 4? Okay, can you show me starting with 1? So you counted your jump. So what was our missing addend? Can you read me your number sentence? Excellent job. Turn your card over, Messiah, when you're done. Pull it out and then do your next card. Alright, well thank you for writing it the way we practice. Alright, read me your number sentence. Read it right here, not on the number. 7 plus 3 equals 10. Just like we're reading a sentence. Alright, let's do one more before we run out of time. Let's pick one from this one's pile.
Okay, I'm going to stop it there. Any comments before we move on? Okay, as you can see, he was allowing them to now do the math. They could talk it out. They could share with him. He was asking them lots of questions so he can make sure that they understood it. Again, finding the missing addend in kindergarten without concrete materials, using a tool. This is definitely a skill that these kids were ready for, but it doesn't mean everybody would be ready for that. So I guess the notes that he was taking is going to help him guide his future instruction because they definitely needed more work with it for sure. Now when he closes out his small group, he should be summarizing the major takeaways. What did they learn? Highlight those main points, making those clarifications. I mean, he did make some clarifications individually to kids, like Beth mentioned before. That feedback is so important. And maybe then discuss homework and center work. So I'll just show you that really quick.
What have we been learning or doing with our number lines? Eswin. Okay, if we forget what numbers come next, we can use a number line. What else have we been using? Today we used it for something different. Sophia, what did we use our number line for today? We start at the big number and then we hop to the little number. That's how we do our addition stories. Could we do this? Could we use this number line if we didn't know addition or subtraction? If we didn't know which way to hop, could we answer our number stories? If we didn't know which way to hop on our number line, we'd still be able to solve it? Or do we have to hop in the right way?
Hop the right way.
Right way. So when we go to the left, what happens to it when we go to the right? Sophia, honey, focus. When we move to the right, what happens to the numbers on our number line?
It goes to the right and it gets bigger.
It gets bigger. Thank you, Messiah. And Kaylee, what about when we go to the left towards the minus sign? What happens? The numbers get smaller. Now, I have something I want you to work on today. Since we've been working on number stories where the addend is missing, we are going to take this home today. And with your family, you're going to show them what we practiced today. We're going to answer a number story about there are 10 children in the class and 6.
Okay, I'll stop it there. So you can see it's just giving them some differentiated homework, kind of wrapping up what they learned. And they're definitely needing more work in this area. This is a tough skill. So you can see that they were still going to need more work with the number line as a tool, especially for missing addends. If anybody has any comments or questions, please feel free to raise your hand. I just want you to think about, if you're not doing it already, what could you do now to incorporate these small groups? If you are doing it, is there anything you can do better? Is there anything that I've said that you want clarification on or you have any questions on? I'd be happy to talk to you now, or anything you want to share about your district. I'm going to stop sharing.
Okay. So you, Chanel Wilson has her hand up, and I think you can unmute yourself.
Okay. Hi, everyone. One thing I've started to do as an administrator is to observe math lessons. I've had some teachers mention that they were shocked when I would go into a different part of their day because they're used to being observed during literacy lessons, language arts lessons. And I've been given feedback surrounding math-rich environments because I don't see that quite often, like vocabulary words being used and math talk. So that's something I've been trying to, on my end, just to help communicate the importance of it.
Thanks, Chanel. I got to visit Chanel's district, and what I loved about it was that they are carving out the time for small group. They do know the importance of it. She was exactly what she just said, just disappointed with the type of centers that were going on. There were more dittos than she wanted to see and things like that. And that's what we tend to see. It's a lot for teachers to plan. And I forget who said it. Maybe it was Erin, but it's a lot to expect from teachers. I always say to teachers, when they say it's a lot of work, I say this is the work. Unfortunately, they might not have known that coming in, but this is the work. It's a lot of work and it's not easy. And oftentimes our young learners or teachers of young learners think that I don't need to have strong math pedagogical content to teach math, but you do. You need to understand that progression, because if I'm teaching children to count to 10, I need to understand how to get them to count to 5 or understand cardinality before I even get to that spot. So it's really important for them to get the professional learning continuously. It can't just be in literacy. So thanks, Chanel. And thank you for putting the importance there, because she's reached out and I appreciate that. I think it's awesome. Anybody else want to share what they're doing or what they think they could do more of?
You
Hi.
had a couple. Oh, go ahead.
Sorry. I think one of the things that I was surprised by, I work in a K2 space, that I think it was October when I went in and I was looking at a math lesson and they hadn't started, and I'm new to the school as an administrator, and they hadn't started using centers in the, or small group in the lesson that I was looking at. And the teacher said to me, well, I have to get to know them. They're not ready for it. It's going to take a while, maybe in January. And I just kind of felt like, you know, if you build the routines in, which I talked about, just like you said, that it is possible, but it just, you know, I was given back the feedback that the program, that the math program that we have in our district takes so much time to get through. So there's just really not enough time. And so she's going to try to incorporate it on Fridays. And so that was why I put that note in the chat earlier, just trying to understand, like, I get how important it is, but I feel like they juggle all that they have to do with the program and what pieces can they leave out to make this happen every day.
And
and I want to be able to support them, I'm just trying to figure out how to better do that.
Honestly, I do think it does take some work at the administration level as well. Like we created in my former district some instructional tools, and I see Christy's here with us today, Lancaster, and she worked on those tools with me. And we broke down for the teachers what should happen if you're teaching, addition with regrouping. What should happen before in September, what should happen at the end of the school year. And we broke it down. Honestly, I think those tools are really important. They do have them at the DOE level still. Those are great tools to use. It says to use them to fit your needs. So what I did in my district was I took those instructional tools and I matched them to my resource because the resources are great. So whether you're using big ideas, everyday math, and visions, whatever, you say, okay, so in September, this is really where kids should be to get to the end, to get to that final goal of counting to 100. They should be counting to 5. And what lessons in everyday math or big ideas or in visions or any of these, can you find these activities? Because not every kid is going to be counting to 100 in September. So how do I get them there? But then again, there's kids who are counting to 100. So why should I bore them? Why should why should 2/3 of the class be sitting there either bored or not knowing what's going on? It's just a waste of their time. And I don't understand why in reading it's so commonplace to say, oh, well, they're not all at the same level. Of course I'm going to do small group instruction. What makes you think that children in math are at the same level? It, I'm not saying that children aren't math children. All children can learn math, but they may not have had the same exposure. They may have had a teacher who really didn't do differentiation. Maybe they didn't have preschool. Um, maybe they do have a deficiency where they do need it in a concrete way before they can bring it to the abstract level. And that's okay. But we do need to meet them where they are, just like in reading. So
Lynn,
thank you.
Sorry, Lynn, you had your hand up. You can unmute yourself.
Oh, can everybody, you can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Melanie.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi, Dot. How are you doing? First of all, I just want to thank you because one of the things that as an administrator, I don't find a lot of PD for math instruction, particularly at the level that I am and how I'm a pre-K through grade 2 building. Having Melanie and Dot come out as well this year, it was really validating for the things that we are doing. We do have 80-minute blocks of math. It is structured for a workshop type model, but just some of the things that I took as a takeaway that I would like to add to her is certainly having a math library. I think that's a wonderful idea. So that is something that I want to look into for all my classrooms as well. The other thing that I was discussing with Beth as we were going through this workshop together is just like in Reader's Workshop, we have anchor charts, and I think being able to create anchor charts for math, particularly when we do goal setting and so forth like that, but to have an anchor chart where students can refer to. Because one of the things that does happen in language arts is as we go through our units of study, teachers consistently have students come up, particularly when they're coming to the end of a unit, to focus on what are some goals that we have gone through, what are some skills that you still need to work on. And that would be a wonderful way for students to be able to track their own progress within what they're learning within those math units. So, those are just some takeaways that I've done through this hour long. So thank you so much.
Thanks, Lynn. Lynn invited us out to visit her district, and we did see some great examples, and we saw some areas of that needed improvement. The thing I love is that it's carved out, the time is there, the support is there through professional learning, and they did have some great models. So you got to really use those people and lean on them to kind of model for others, because there were some really good things going on. Before we take the next question, just someone put in the chat that they found some good resources from Dr. Nikki Newton. She does have a lot of great resources. Her book, Guided Math in Action, really helped us to change what we were doing in small group instruction. It is a good place to start. It has a lot of good ideas, frameworks, the first 20 days, setting up your environment. So if you do want to go to a Dr. Nikki book, that's a great one to start with, if anyone has any other suggestions. Erin, did you want to share something? Hold on a second.
Hi, thanks. I think equally important, again, the math brain in me, while we're, differentiating and we're teaching these great math concepts using manipulatives, it's kind of important to start teaching good math habits too, in K1, 2, especially with technology. I see in classroom after classroom, students, as soon as they do a problem on the computer, we forget about scrap paper. We forget how we set up our getting ready to problem solve, how we, even as simple as in kindergarten, like when you're solving a math problem, you're not allowed to write in yellow. Like these are all things that I don't know. Kids aren't learning in college anymore. So like we have to help our teachers, just give those little tips, because that can make a difference. Not just on a state test, but if the children actually know the math but can't show that they know it because it doesn't come across in a somewhat organized, legible fashion, like, and those habits start in those early elementary grades, and then they can take them with them. So
you're absolutely right.
we have to get in the classrooms to see.
You
Because
said a
the
lot.
focus is reading and writing, but those little things that we as I don't know, old, experienced educators, we can kind of help our younger with that.
I agree with you. I had a teacher the other day say, actually, it wasn't a teacher, it was a principal. And he said, why do we need to do formative assessment and small group instruction? We have iReady, and it already assessed the kids and put them at a level. And now they're practicing in iReady, and I can just have my teachers teach whole group to everybody while everyone else is getting what they need on iReady. And exactly what you just said, Erin, where was the discussion? Where was the sharing and clarifying our understanding? Because I got to tell you, a kid might get 7 plus 3 correct, but did they start at 3 and add up 7? Do they, when they do a subtraction problem, are they thinking addition? How do they understand a problem? Can they act it out? Can they do a problem solving experience and understand why it's addition, why it's a subtraction problem? So there's so much discussion that has to be had in these small groups. So you're absolutely right. I'm sad to hear that. I heard that from a principal that it's just not that important. It's getting done on iReady. So now we just do whole group. I follow Envisions, day 1, day 2, day 3. That's that. And it's disheartening. So you're right. Teachers aren't getting taught that in college. So we do need to talk to them about that. I saw Dr. Pam. She was laughing because she agrees. I know. Anybody else have a question or a comment? Oh, I know we're past the time. So it's 2:08. So if you need to log off, you can. I'm going to stay on for anyone who has any more comments or questions. I'd love to hear from you. I'll stay on as long as you like, but please don't feel obligated to stay any longer. This was only our first meeting, and I just wanted to bring to you the importance of small group instruction. I have a feeling that everyone in this space already knows that, but through my visits throughout the state, I found that there's still so many districts that aren't able to get this accomplished and don't see the importance in it in math. So we'll start here, and and we'll branch out. So I appreciate your time and you being here, and we'll have more meetings like this, I hope. And I appreciate you being here. So log off if you feel like you'd like to, and if anyone wants to stay on and ask a question, we are here.
Thanks for all your time. Thanks for
Thank
your
you
time.
for your time.
Do you want me to stop recording?
Sure.